Physical Education Chapter 10 Biomechanics and Sports Important Questions Long Answer Type Question 5 marks each QL. What is projectile? Explain the factors affecting projectile trajectory. A. Ends. Projectile, an object thrown into the space either horizontally or an acute angle under the action of gravity is called a projectile. There are forces which act on a projectile: gravitational force and air resistance. Air resistance of an object varies greatly and it depends on the object's particular shape and the atmospheric conditions in which the object is released. The factors affecting projectile trajectory are mentioned below. A. Angle of projection. An object which is projected at different angles covers different distances. When it is projected or released at angle of 30, making it a parabolic path and covers lesser distance. When it is projected at 60, it covers a distance less than 30. When it is released at an angle of 45, makes a parabolic path and covers maximum distance. So the distance covered by an object, shot put, hammer, javelin, discus etc. depends on the angle of release of projectile. B. Height of release. The higher the level of release, the greater distance is covered in flight, 2/5. This is because the higher projectile is released, the longer it will be in the air. The horizontal component will be acting on the projectile for longer. C. Speed of release. Initial velocity. The speed or velocity is directly related to the distance covered in flight. The speed of release depends on initial vertical velocity and initial horizontal velocity. Having higher horizontal velocity will increase the length of flight time and therefore the distance covered. This would be an advantage in sports which primarily requires good distance in long jump, sky jump etc. D. Gravity. Gravity acts on a body or object to give it mass. The greater the weight of an object, the greater the influence of gravity upon it. Gravity will affect a projectile as well as it will decrease the height the projectile can obtain. For example, a cricket ball can be thrown at greater distance in comparison to shot put. E. Air resistance. When a projectile moves through the air, it is slowed down by an air resistance. Air resistance decreases the horizontal component of a projectile. The effect of air resistance is very small, but it need to be taken into consideration if you want to increase the 3/5 horizontal components of a projectile. The factors are related to the amount of air resistance acting on a projectile: mass, surface of the object, surface of the volume ratio. Trajectory. Initial horizontal velocity, vertical component, initial vertical velocity, horizontal component. F. Spin. The amount and direction of spin acting on a projectile will directly affect the distance while travel. The main reason behind this fact is the air pressure acting on the object. Q2. Discuss the mechanical analysis of walking in details. A. Ends. Mechanical analysis of walking can be studied in two fields: stance phasor. Stance phase is the time when the foot is on the ground. It is considered that it consists of maximum percentage of walking cycle. For the part of stance phase, both the feet have a contact with the ground for a period of time. The stance phase of walking is divided into 5 stages. Heel strike. This stage begins when the feet first touches the ground and continuous until the complete foot is on the ground, i.e. early flat foot stage. Early flat foot. The starting of this stage is that movement when the complete foot is on the ground, and early flat foot stage occurs when the body's center of gravity passes over the top of the foot. The center of gravity of the body is located approximately in the pelvic area of the lower spine while walking. The main purpose of this stage is to allow the foot to act as a shock absorber. Late flat foot. An athlete comes into late flat foot stage when his body's center of gravity passes in front of neutral position. This stage lasts when the heel lifts off the ground. During this stage, the foot needs to go from being a shock absorber to being a rigid lever which can help to propel the body in forward direction. Heel rise. This stage starts when the heel begins to leave the ground. The foot functions are a rigid lever to move the body in forward direction. During this stage of walking, the ground forces that go through the foot are very efficient. Toe off. This stage begins when the toes leave the ground completely. This stage continues until the beginning of swing phase. 4/5 swing phase. It occurs when one foot is on the ground and other one is in the air. Swing phase in walking is shorter than the stance phase. It is divided into 3 phases. Initial swings. This phase sees the hip extended to 10-0 and then going on to flexion and knee flexed to 40 to 60-0 and the ankle changing its position from the flexion to neutral. Mid-swing. This phase sees the hip extended to 30-0, the knee flexion till 60-0 and extended approximately to 30-0 and ankle become dorsiflexed. Terminal swing. This phase is the hip flexed till 30-0 and the knee is locked extension and foot changes its position from dorsiflexed to neutral. Q3. What are the different phases of running cycle? A. Ends. Running is an essential part of living beings. Running is important in sports also. A good runner will not only be able to defeat its opponents in running, but would also be able to gain very good takeoff velocity that would help to take a higher or longer jump. Different phases of running are mentioned below. Running style phases: sprinting, fast running, jogging. Initial contact. This phase sees the front of the foot of the sprinter making contact with the ground. Their heel might or might not touch the ground later depending on their personal running technique. This phase sees the middle of the foot or heel of the fast runner make contact with the ground. This phase the full foot or the heel of the jogger make contact with the ground. This phase is very quick and the sprinter's foot is this phase is very quick and the fast runner will spend in comparison to sprinters and the fast runners who use their feet and 5/5 mid-stance usually in the same position as in the phase of the initial contact. This phase in mid-stance as he pushes through with this foot, ankle to move into the next phase. Joggers tend to move their center of gravity forward to do the same. Propulsion. This phase see the hips of the sprinter extending back ready to propel him forward to take off. His arms simultaneously swing at full power to help him. The fast runner receives propulsion through the big toe with his hips extended back and knee slightly bent. The jogger will receive propulsion through the big toe. But if the hips of the jogger are not fully extended back, then the propulsion is received from the other toes. The arms of the jogger only move a small amount. Swing. The non-supporting leg of the sprinter swings high with the knee at almost at an angle of 90. The knee of the supporting leg of the fast runner will be lifted, although not as high as that of a sprinter. The knee of your non-supporting leg of the jogger remains low and only slightly bent.